Hi, Hunter. I see you online. Can you please confirm you can hear us from in the room?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hello. Oh. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting, the January 6th, 2026 regular meeting of the Nederland BOT, 7:14. Macy, could you take the roll?
Mayor Billy,
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Here.
very faintly heard her say here.
Yeah, can you guys hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. They're pretty quiet. You're quiet, Doug. I don't know what you can do for her volume, their volume.
Trustee Maris? Here. Trustee Miller?
Here.
Trustee Jocelyn?
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate that. With that, we will go ahead and just go into our, we have a few items on consent, 4 items on consent, minutes, and our public posting location for meetings for the year, and then community center tenant leases. If you have any questions, ask them of John.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Macy.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling?
Yes.
Trustee Maris? Yes. Mayor Billy?
Yes.
Trustee Jocelyn?
Yes.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. With that, we will go to our first. We have 3 informational items tonight. The first one doesn't have a name. John, do you want to talk about it? Roger?
Yeah. Mayor and trustees, hold on one sec. I'm going to turn my mic down just a tiny bit. Or Macy, can you turn mic 14 down just a tiny bit? Sorry, we got a new soundboard and it's still getting adjusted. Okay, that sounds better. Mayor and trustees, you have before you a proclamation honoring the public service of Roger Cornell. Roger Cornell is a resident of Nederland, and for many years, he has given years and years of public service to the town of Nederland, including serving as the elected member of the Board of Trustees during multiple terms and twice as Mayor Pro Tem. In addition to this service on the Board of Trustees, Roger Cornell served the town on the Planning Commission and as an alternate member of the Board of Zoning Adjustment. And whereas his participation in town boards and commissions contributed to deliberation on land use, planning, and municipal policy that informed governance of the community, and whereas his long involvement in civic work has provided institutional knowledge and continuity in decision-making and reflects sustained commitment to community involvement, and whereas at the conclusion of his service, the town also acknowledges the ongoing work of those who now and in the future carry forward civic responsibilities for the good of the community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the town of Nederland hereby extends its thanks to Roger Cornell for his years of public service and civic involvement and recognizes his contributions to the governance and advisory work of the community, adopted and proclaimed this 6th day of January 2026. I didn't say it well at the beginning of this aim here, but Roger recently resigned from Planning Commission, and he is a person who has had a huge impact on this town. And so we just wanted to extend thanks through this proclamation to him tonight. Any questions you have for me, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? John? We do appreciate all the time and energy Roger has put into town government for a very long time here in Nederland. So it's an information item for you, Jim. You have 3 minutes and 1 second.
Hello, I'm Jim Reese, Nederland resident, 66 Barker Road. And I'm also the current chair of the Planning Commission. I just wanted to come and thank Roger personally. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight. He was traveling in Alaska and wasn't able to make it back for this, but I'm sure he'll be able to see this online. Roger Cornell served the community of Nederland and its residents as a member of the BOT or Planning Commission without a break in service since 1986. During that time, his contributions are too long to list, but here are a few of his achievements. Roger was the driving force in updating the 1981 zoning map and the development of the first town building codes in 1996. He was there to work on the first town comprehensive plan in 1987 and 4 subsequent updates in 1994, 2002, 2013, and 2024. Roger was a key contributor to the 2011 Town Master Infrastructure Plan. Commissioner Cornell worked with the staff on planning and resiliency efforts after the 2013 floods. Roger served as chairman of the Nederland Planning Commission for more than 20 years and delivered 40 years of leadership and guidance for the town on zoning and development. Roger mentored and guided numerous new members of the Planning Commission, including me. The impact of his contributions in town are vast and immeasurable. It's rare for someone to serve in such an important capacity in the community for so long. I, for one, am extremely thankful for his many years of service to the community of Nederland. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. With that, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
I will, just as a note, we're going to put this on nice paper and give it to him in a way that he can keep it forever. So
Thank you. With that, we'll go to our second informational item of the evening, the state of the town.
Well, Mayor and trustees, I wanted to take this opportunity to look back on 2025 and look forward towards 2026. You were here, so you know how busy it was in 2025 for us. We had a lot of projects, one of which we're discussing tonight, which is the acquisition of Eldora Ski Resort. But there were many others that were happening every day throughout the town that you guys were involved in and that staff was involved in. And so what I've done is try to kind of walk you through that. 2025 really did ask a lot of Nederland and its residents. And I think in that work, we really see what makes Nederland special. People came together, especially in the Caribou Village fire, in a way that really shows how much residents and business owners in this place care about each other. Volunteers stepped forward, advisory boards offered knowledge and local insight. The Board of Trustees weighed decisions carefully and stood with the community through a time of great uncertainty. We had regional partners throughout the state reach out to us when the fire came. Everybody did their part. We endured together, and I think we're going to thrive together in 2026. All of this happened with a constrained budget in our general funds. And that really required a lot of focus, both from the board and staff, on the essentials. Within those limits, though, our community still moved forward. Our community center remained a gathering place in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. Businesses adapted and continued serving residents. Advisory boards continued engaging deeply in questions that shape the places and values of our town. And these really held us steady and set the stage for the work that we have ahead in 2026. One really big achievement that we had in 2025 was the adoption of the comprehensive plan, which is a project that took over a year to complete. It reflects the values and aspirations that guide long-term decision-making here in Nederland. In 2025, work across departments and advisory boards began aligning with that direction in terms of infrastructure reliability, housing, transportation access, environmental stewardship, and organizational capacity. We will continue this work as we move forward into 2026. In my aim, I gave you some of the things that have happened that show progress of what we have been doing in 2025. In infrastructure and reliability, we started a valve exercising program, finding valves that had been buried for years and making sure that we're strengthening our system reliability. We engaged in a project of hydrant repair and testing. We started installing new Badger water meters throughout the town, which are cellular and allow increased system reliability and accuracy for our water billing. We continued working on sewer and manhole clearing to reduce a backlog of deferred maintenance within our system. And we continued our summer maintenance program in relation to stormwater and ditch work to make sure that we are managing water flow throughout the town. For parks, recreation, and community spaces, we continue to maintain all of our facilities as our use of these facilities has increased. The Board of Trustees, staff, and ProSab all work together to monitor progress this year, especially on Gercio Field and some of our other recreational facilities like the rink in town. Staff has been working to make sure that we can increase both the summer and winter programming we have at the rink. And our parks and trails teams have kept up with the maintenance and upkeep of these facilities and started thinking more about how we can increase our capacity to do more of that work in the summer. ProSab has engaged in a lot of strategic thinking about what a facilities capital maintenance plan might look like in terms of recreation for Nederland. And they've also been working on a PROST, which is a recreation open space plan to guide future recreation and open space decisions in the town. One other thing I just wanted to highlight in terms of parks, recreation, and community spaces, we have been coordinating with event organizers, NedFire, BCSO, and volunteers to really be thinking about how we do special events here in Nederland, how we use our downtown spaces, and how we make sure that we have good gathering spaces within our community. And I think a lot of that work you'll see coming to fruition in 2026. In terms of government operations, we've been busy as well. One of the big things we did is we had a change in leadership in our municipal court, and we've been really working on improving the reliability and customer service of that operation. We updated our procurement policy this year to align with federal expectations as we do more and more grants throughout town. We adopted, and by we, I mean you adopted, the town donation and volunteer policy to support consistent expectations for that work. We began working on expectations and operating documents for advisory boards, including the DDA bylaws, which is going to help that board move forward effectively into 2026. We have begun building work planning templates at the staff level to build consistency into how projects are scoped and communicated. We replaced our outdated website with a new one, which has just gone live, which improves digital access and transparency and gives us better access to ADA tools to make our web governance more accessible. And then also working in the ADA space to remediate older documents through the coordination of our planner and clerk. And then finally, I just have here improved workflows for policy and aim development. That's something that we've been working with all the boards on to make sure that you get information that's useful to you in this board setting. In terms of staff development and organizational capacity, we have this year advanced several professional certifications across all of our departments, including significant new water and wastewater credentials for our water and wastewater supervisor, who is now our ORC of our plant. Credentials to our clerk, who is now a certified clerk in Colorado. We had one of our staff members get an additional CDL for streets, and we are working on a number of other certifications that should start coming forward in 2026 as well. We've also been working on cross-training in utilities, parks, and courts to improve our service reliability, and we're working on internal agreements and leadership expectations for our teams, as well as procedural documents, just to make sure that our procedures are all documented properly. In planning and land use, we've been busy. Planning Commission has done a lot of work this year, starting with the adoption of the comprehensive plan, which had most significant community engagement of any project that's been done in Nederland to that point. That has been integrated into work planning now. It's been adopted by Planning Commission, and then you also adopted that. We've done some preparatory work for what we're calling our sub-area plan, which is the downtown plan that looks at that space and what it might look like as we move forward. We've engaged in some code changes in Chapter 16 to continue to support the town's affordable housing goals, including ADU-related work, while making sure that that development can fit into the context of Nederland. And then also, Planning Commission has just worked through several land use applications with different stakeholders in Nederland that come up through the course of the year. Housing and childcare, we are continuing to work on our Prop 113 commitment to provide 13 units of affordable housing by the end of 2026. And Teens Inc. continues to develop a childcare solution in partnership with the town that supports families and strengthens year-round community stability. In the public safety space, one of the big things that happened this year is you granted me emergency authority after the fire to make sure that we were able to respond quickly and help the businesses that were affected by the fire and to do different things from a land use perspective that were needed. We continue that work today. Our fire mitigation team formed and started kind of putting together a plan in streets and parks, and that's a group that will be working throughout the town in fire mitigation. We've continued to update our emergency operations planning and strengthening our coordination with Ned Fire and also Boulder County Office of Disaster Management. And then working also just with the sheriff's office through Coffee with the Sheriff events, night out events, citation process review, and just making sure that we're supporting reliability and shared expectations for that contract we have with them to provide law enforcement services. The last thing I've really got here is regional coordination and transportation. That's a really critical thing for Nederland, and we have been partnering specifically with Boulder County and working through their transit office for transit services here in Nederland, and then working with our state partners and other partners on all the different things that we are doing from a policy perspective here in Nederland. One thing I really wanted to highlight as I kind of move to the end of this staff report is that all of this work happens within the context of what has to happen every day. We want toilets to flush in Nederland without having to think about it. We want to make sure snow gets removed. We want to make sure that we're taking care of all the little things that happen on a day-to-day. I think that we've done a pretty good job of doing that. And I think one of the things that we've really been focused on the staff level is how we can improve our capacity to do that, make sure that our services are accessible and that we're steady and always thinking about how we can serve our community. And I think our staff has done a pretty good job of that this year. In terms of organizational capacity and leadership, our department head staff here had a really good 2025. And what we've really been focused on is strengthening expectations for what a department head is, communication between each other and the public, coordinating between our work to make sure that we're supporting consistent service delivery. Department heads in Nederland are all responsible for frontline activities. Our streets director is often in a plow or a grader, and that happens in every department. Everybody's doing day-to-day work. And what we're trying to do as we kind of move forward into 2026 is to really make sure that we also build time for those strategic priorities that happen as well that affect their departments. I think that pretty much covers everything that we have really been working on. One thing that I'm excited for in 2026 is to strengthen the collaboration that we have between the Board of Trustees, advisory boards, and staff, and continue working on how we make decisions in Nederland and how we bring that into the public through community engagement and partnership. I think we have a lot of opportunities for increased regional coordination, specifically just because of what we've been dealing with in 2025 to make sure that we are, Nederland doesn't exist on an island. We're using our partnerships and we're taking our space in this region to, effectively and working with those partners to make sure that we can answer these bigger policy goals. There's going to be a lot of work in 2026. I've got a couple of the highlights that we'll be focused on, and there's going to be more. We'll continue talking about your strategic goals for 2026, but some of the big things that we have happening in 2026 right now is in April, there will be an election for the Board of Trustees. We will continue working on our summer maintenance program for parks, streets, and utilities. We are looking forward to the completion of the TIPS grant, which adds new sidewalks and street enhancements along First Street. The same for the SMS grant, which adds new sidewalks and safer crossing points along the highway. We are going to be finalizing the planning work for the Big Springs egress project in 2026. We'll continue working towards the affordable housing goals we have for the end of 2026. There's several code updates we'd like to bring towards the board and planning commission to continue aligning the code to the desires of our community. We'll continue evaluating long-term recreation improvements at the risk, utilizing some technical expertise to make sure we can build a facility that can be resilient as we kind of move forward over the next several years. And then one of the things that I'm really excited about is starting to work on a capital facilities plan to guide long-term stewardship of town assets like this building and town hall. Couple other things. Along that same line, we're going to be working on a rehabilitation plan for the west wing of this building. We'd like to start thinking about our law enforcement services with BCSO to make sure that we're really focusing on community policing and resilience for that contract. We want to continue coordinating with Boulder County and NEPIDAC to improve regional transportation opportunities for residents here in Nederland. The integration of Eldora Mountain Resort into the town. Preparation of information for a board discussion on potential revenue strategies and government options that could further improve the resiliency of our general fund, kind of building on our budget conversation that we had this fall. And then also just continuing to work to develop viable volunteer programs for work that does happen throughout town. I know that was a lot in a very short period, but I want to just close on saying that we are starting 2026 in a steady fashion. I think our town is engaged. I think you are all engaged in the work we're doing. And I think we're all in a good place to continue the work that we started in 2025 that you have been doing for longer than I've been here. I'm excited to keep working on that with you. Our staff is going to continue focusing on delivering essential services to the town, strengthening practices that support consistent work, and preparing for the responsibilities that come from some of the changes that will happen in 2026. And I think the only thing that I want to leave you with is a quote that is important to me. And I think that really the important thing to remember here is that the work here matters to everyone here. I think we all agree on what we need to do to make sure that Nederland remains a special place. And that work will hold true for all of us because we're all a part of it. And so that's my State of the Town address for today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, clarifying questions for John?
No, but just thank you, John. It's a lot of work that happens, so thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. We're adjusting your volume. We could hear you, but just barely, so we're fixing it.
Hey, Mayor Pro Tem Sterling, can you please say something real quick so we can do a sound check in the room?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, that sounds much better. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, I just said thank you, John. There's a lot of work that happens that people aren't aware of, and so thank you. Thank you so much.
I would even go so far to say is, even though there's a lot in this report, John, there's even more that gets done that isn't in here. So this is a lot that happens. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate everything you do, and it's taken a lot of time to try to summarize it, to at least describe some of it.
I can speak for myself and for staff. I think we're all honored to work for Nederland and work with this board. And so thank you all for the opportunity to do that.
Our pleasure. With that, we will move to our third information item of the evening regarding just information about the bond ordinance that we'll be talking about in a couple weeks. Jennifer and John. And to be clear, this is the bond ordinance regarding the Eldora acquisition.
Yeah. Well, Mayor and Trustees, what you have before you is an information item giving you a peek ahead of what the next step is in the process for the Eldora acquisition. Tonight, you have before you a asset purchase agreement and a transition services agreement, which are the first step in kind of formalizing the next steps in this process. After that, what we need to do is bring to you a bond ordinance and indenture of trust, and we're intending to do that on January 20th for formal consideration and approval. These documents will authorize our mountain recreation enterprise, which you created last year, which is a Tabor fund. So it's an enterprise fund essentially that has to work like a business to finance the purchase of Eldora Mountain Resort. That is what is before you on the APA and the TSA are what are before you tonight. And then this would be the next step, the approval of the bond indenture of trust. In terms of kind of, I guess what we really want to talk about is this ordinance that you'll have tonight. It really outlines the public purpose of what we are doing tonight, the community benefits of that acquisition, including stewardship, economic vitality, and community development. The purchase ordinance states the board's intent that the acquisition of Eldora is funded through enterprise revenue bonds to be repaid only from revenues generated by Eldora's future operations. It also directs that the details of the financing be presented to the board under a separate bond ordinance. So what I'm saying is tonight, what we're really doing is saying why we want to purchase it, and you're entering into that agreement, and then that bond ordinance is the piece that authorizes the the movement on those bonds. What the ordinance on the 20th really does is it kind of just formalizes all of that, what is in the asset purchase agreement for the bond purchase. It also, those bond proceeds will cover the purchase of the resort, but it also covers all the different costs that we have associated with getting to this point, which is some things like the transition services, the capital needs we have, reserves, and the cost of issuing those bonds. So one thing that is true is we'll be able to recoup some of these costs that we had in this process through the bond ordinance. The approach that we're taking for this with these bonds is to make sure that Eldora is able to operate as a self-supporting revenue-generating community asset. Basically, it will run on the revenue earned from lift tickets, rentals, food and beverage, and other resort activities, and that will pay for its long-term operations as well as its acquisition. Using enterprise bonds has some benefits for the town. Specifically, the purchase can be completed without using any property taxes, sales taxes, or our general funds. It keeps the responsibility for repayment limited to Eldora and the business of Eldora and its ability to generate revenue. And financial stability is supported through the reserves that we create in that fund. So there will be reserves, covenants on how money can be spent, and then regular reporting that happens annually to make sure that those goals are met. We have engaged bond counsel to make sure that the financing follows state and federal law. Our bond counsel is Casey Vio and Lindsay Conroy, who work for Klein Alvarado Vio, and they are our bond counsel. And then we also have a disclosure counsel, who is Matt Touchard and Dean Hurt, and they work for Butler Snow. These two counsels have worked very closely with our underwriters, who are RBC and Bank of America, as well as town staff to develop bond and disclosure documents that reflect the community benefits and findings that you find in your purchase ordinance tonight. The team approach has made sure that the financing structure complies with all federal and state law and follows the best practices for public finance. The structure also is designed to support the continued operation of Eldora by ensuring that debt payments, reserves, and financial covenants are related to the resort's operating needs. This will help make sure that the financing supports both the successful acquisition and the long-term stable operation of the mountain recreation enterprise. Some of the high-level points to know about the bond ordinance right now is that it will authorize the issuance of mountain recreation revenue bonds, which is called the Series 2026, to fund the acquisition of Eldora and related costs. It confirms that bond repayment is limited only to that enterprise fund. It also approves the indenture of trust and other related finance documents necessary for issuing those bonds. It sets limits on the bond size, the bond maturities, interest rates, and key terms, and it allows designated town officials to finalize bond terms within bond approved limits so that we can respond to market conditions that may exist while we're in the marketing process of those bonds while keeping board oversight. The indenture of trust is the other document that you will be seeing, and this explains how Eldora revenues will be managed after the acquisition. The primary thing about it is it shows the money flow from resort operations into operating, maintenance, capital, and reserve accounts. It will establish required reserves that help stabilize operations and support reinvestment over time. It will allow for senior and subordinate bond structures that balance flexibility with financial strength. It provides finance and operating covenants that support transparency and responsible management, ongoing reporting and disclosure to support public accountability. And then altogether, what these will do is help protect the value of Eldora, support year-round operations, and ensure revenues are used in ways that match the community benefits that you all identified. Some of the community forward elements that we want to highlight for you is first and foremost the local stewardship of this model. The financing supports local ownership and community aligned management of Eldora Resort, which has been one of the primary goals of this project all along. It allows for reinvestment so that resort revenues are used for operations, debt payments, and reserves. And then there is a process to reinvest them into maintenance, improvements, community priorities for Eldora. It allows for economic resilience by supporting year-round recreation and more stable revenue across seasons. workforce and community stability by allowing for long-term planning around workforce needs and community services identified in the purchase ordinance. And then public accountability, because we will have board oversight, financial covenants, and reporting to ensure that the operation of the resort remains aligned with community values. For this item, this is an information item. Next steps are we need to continue working with bond counsel and disclosure counsel, as well as the finance team, and bring to you on January 20th, the bond ordinance and indenture of trust for formal board consideration and approval. If it is approved, we will then move forward with the bond issuance and closing in coordination with the Eldora acquisition, consistent with your findings and long-term community goals. If you have questions, Jennifer and I are happy to answer.
Questions for John?
John, I think you
Or
hit,
Jennifer?
I think you hit this in the very beginning, but you know, the structure of this is such that the model provides for both the debt service, capital improvements, and the ongoing operations of the ski area, all as part of the way that all the bonds are set up.
Correct.
And that's capital improvements being, you know, the things that are on the plan for things that need to be, you know, repaired or rebuilt at the ski area.
Yeah, one of the goals stated by the board was to ensure that operations remain resilient. So we want to make sure there's enough money to operate the resort and to pay folks and to also be thinking forward into the capital needs in the future. And these bonds are designed to do just that.
More questions for John or Jeff? Great. Thanks for that presentation. Jennifer, was there anything you wanted to add or?
At all.
Great.
Thank you.
So this is an information item, so there's no public comment on this particular Eldora acquisition item, but from here, we're moving on to our first of two action items of the evening, which is the approval of the asset purchase agreement. And there will be time for public comment during this.
Well, Mayor and trustees, you said it pretty well. This action item is a request to take formal action on Ordinance 882, which authorizes the execution of an asset purchase agreement and related documents for the acquisition of Eldora Mountain Resort. This ordinance declares public purpose and benefits of acquiring the resort, including securing long-term local stewardship and providing ongoing economic, social, and recreational advantages to the community. Board action is required to move this forward with this acquisition and to realize the associated community benefits, and that's what this ordinance would do. As background, the town of Nederland has been working to acquire Eldora Mountain Resort to ensure long-term local stewardship of one of our most important economic and recreational assets. The purchase would transfer ownership of the resort's lifts, lodges, snowmaking systems, and related facilities to the town through our Mountain Recreation Enterprise Fund. The goal is to maintain continuous operations under local ownership, reinvest revenues into the mountain and the surrounding community, and preserve Eldora's role as a regional gateway for outdoor recreation. As background on the due diligence completed to this point, town staff, in coordination with several external consultants and legal counsel, have undertaken comprehensive due diligence process to evaluate all the aspects of this proposed acquisition. This includes a full property condition assessment that reviewed the physical condition of facilities, lifts, and snowmaking infrastructure, as well as a phase 1 environmental site assessment to identify potential environmental conditions and to ensure regulatory compliance on the mountain. We also did a full evaluation of Eldora's financial performance and business operations, including historical revenues, expenses, and capital reinvestment needs to confirm the viability of continued operations under town ownership. Additional assessments address human resources and workforce structures, information technology systems, insurance coverage, and risk management programs to ensure this readiness and continuity. Legal diligence included an extensive review of title, contracts, permits, employment matters, water rights, and compliance with applicable state, federal, and local law. These evaluations made for a comprehensive understanding of the operational, financial, and environmental and legal condition of all of the assets under consideration. Based on the results of this diligence, we believe the resort is in good overall condition and represents a high-quality, viable asset for the community. The facilities and core infrastructure are well maintained and positioned to support continued and sustainable operations. The resort's physical and financial condition, combined with its established role as a year-round recreation destination, reinforces its long-term value to the town and residents. With thoughtful stewardship, the asset has the potential to generate ongoing economic, social, and environmental benefits while preserving a key community amenity for future generations. Do you want me to?
Sure. Yes, I will cover the agreements. Can you all hear me? My mic is, okay, great. So I'm going to provide a brief high-level overview of the two principal agreements that you have in the packet tonight. And these are for the proposed acquisition of Eldora Mountain Resort. So as a reminder, and Town Manager Kane mentioned this earlier this evening, is that last year in January of 2025, the board adopted Ordinance 873. And what that ordinance did was establish the town's mountain recreation enterprise. That mountain recreation enterprise is a function of Tabor, and that enterprise was specifically created to allow the town to own, operate, and finance this mountain recreation asset in a manner that is separate from the town's general operations. So this transaction is being conducted through that enterprise, consistent with that structure that the board approved at that time. So the first agreement that's in your packet is the asset purchase agreement that establishes the legal framework for the acquisition itself. The buyer under the agreement is the town of Nederland, acting through the Mountain Recreation Enterprise, and the sellers are Powder Corp and their related entities. That agreement is structured as an asset purchase, meaning it identifies and transfers the specific assets used to operate the resort. That includes all of the facilities, equipment, real property interest, water rights, permits, contracts, and intellectual property. The agreement clearly defines which assets transfer to the town and then which assets will remain with the sellers. It also establishes a defined purchase price of $120 million and a customary closing adjustment and framework for that purchase price. As part of the closing process that's spelled out in the asset purchase agreement, the agreement identifies several approvals and agreements that need to be in place before that closing. One of those key approvals that needs to be put in place is the town needs to have a new special use permit that's issued by the U.S. Forest Service. And that is because the resort operates on federal land. Another key component that is a condition to close is the continued participation in the Icon Pass program. And that requires an agreement with Alterra. And that allows, again, the resort to remain part of that Icon Pass. Lastly, the agreement also has customary transactional items such as title insurance and any assignment of key operating contracts and licenses. The final condition to closing is that the town is able to secure that bond financing that Town Manager Kane spoke about earlier tonight. And that financing, again, is being addressed through a separate process through that bond ordinance that'll come back to the board on January 20th. The second agreement that is part of this asset purchase agreement is a transition services agreement. The purpose of this is to support continuity of the operations following closing. Under this agreement, Powder will provide advisory, administrative, and enterprise support services for a 2-year transition period. That includes access to certain established systems and platforms that are used to support functions on the mountain. Having that transition services agreement in place will ensure a smooth transition from Powder to the town. The services that Powder will provide under this transition services agreement must be provided at levels consistent to what they're currently providing, and the services agreement is governed by a fixed annual fee and coordination between the parties. These two agreements together implement the framework that the board approved when it created the Mountain Recreation Enterprise. And they establish a structure for acquisition, identify the approvals and financing needed to complete the transaction, and provide a clear path for continued operations during that transition period. Turn it back to John to conclude on this presentation.
One of the things I want to talk about is the continued process here, especially surrounding public engagement and communication. One of the things we've really tried to do throughout this process is to keep our FAQ document updated. That document is currently at level 4.0. We intend to continue updating this FAQ as new questions come up and more information becomes available. We're also going to be sharing updates through Town Talks, which is an informal meeting that we hold here in town, community newsletters, board meetings, and other public forums. There will be other opportunities to ask questions and discussion, and residents are encouraged to reach out to staff at any time with ideas or concern. If the board approves this acquisition, public engagement will continue throughout the transition and implementation. Our intention is to keep providing clear updates, listening to community feedback, and reporting on progress so residents can stay informed and confident as the project remains moving forward. We'll always be available to answer questions and to support community understanding. One thing I want to note is we'll publish this through our channels that we have, but we're going to hold several town halls over the next few months. The first one will be Tuesday the 13th at 6 p.m. and that will be here in the community center. We intend to publish our next version of the FAQ on the 19th. And then Thursday the 29th, we'll hold another town hall meeting. Tuesday the 10th, we'll hold a town hall meeting, and then we'll have several coffee talks throughout that same time, and then staff will be available to answer questions as well. That's our current schedule, and like I said, we'll have that published tomorrow publicly. We do have a recommendation for you. Staff does recommend that the Board of Trustees, acting through the Mountain Recreation Enterprise, approve ordinance number 882, authorizing the approval of an asset purchase agreement and related documents for the acquisition of Eldora Mountain Resort. There is a proposed motion in your packet. There's also attached in the packet, you can find ordinance 882, the asset purchase agreement, and the form of the transition services agreement. Jennifer and I are available for your questions.
Hey, John, there was a section called financing and underwriting in the AIM. I think there's some like really important key pieces in there. Would you mind running over that?
Yeah, sure. Our underwriters are RBC Capital Markets and Bank of America, and they're co-underwriters for this project. These firms were selected because they both have strong experience working with cities and towns on large public projects and enterprise financings. Their role is to help the town structure, market, and sell the bonds in a careful and professional way. Our financing is intended to use revenue bonds, which are a specific kind of bond that are only paid back from money that is earned by the resort itself. This could be any kind of revenue, such as lift tickets, rentals, food and beverage, or other resort activities. It is not possible to pay them back through property taxes or sales taxes. Residents are not responsible for repaying these bonds, and our general fund is not pledged at all for this purchase. This approach allows a significant community benefit because it allows us to benefit from Eldora's economic activity without creating any new taxes. The Mountain Recreation Enterprise is responsible for covering its own costs and debt using the revenues it generates. The financing plan also includes a 2-year debt service reserve, which we've talked about a little bit. This reserve acts like a savings account that can be used to make bond payments if revenues are lower than expected in any year for any reason, such as poor weather conditions. This reserve being in place adds stability and helps protect the town and the community, as well as the mountain. Overall, this approach really reflects what we believe is a pretty responsible strategy. It uses the resort's own revenues to fund the acquisition, it protects the town's general finances, and it supports long-term local ownership and stewardship of the mountain.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. And Jennifer, I'm wondering if you have any clarifying questions, folks?
Thank you both so much for that informative presentation. John, you talked earlier about kind of the comprehensive due diligence that's been done. Did the financial due diligence show any trends that might affect the resort's ability to sustain operations under town's ownership and management?
The town, as we talked about, we engaged several consultants throughout this process, including financial consultants and ski area professionals that benchmarked the operations of Eldora compared to other resorts that are comparable in the region. And they looked at their historic financial data. And what they found by and large is the mountain is successful and it's a viable business enterprise for the town to be considering the purchase of as we move forward. And that's something that we can expect as we move forward in different conditions that might happen.
Just along that same vein, how confident are we that operating revenues will cover the projected debt service even in weaker snow years?
We are fairly confident in our consultants, what they have given us. They've modeled out they've looked at the historic revenue that's generated by the mountain, and they've modeled that out given different kinds of conditions on the mountain. And we've taken a conservative approach. That's one of the things that the board wanted to do, to make sure that we have adequate debt service to cover the resort, even in the case of a poor snow year. The other thing is that reserve fund that we're talking about has been established and will be maintained at a healthy level so that we can make sure that we can continue in those cases, so that we have a fairly healthy reserve for those cases.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Tierney. Any other clarifying questions?
Yeah, John, can you speak to a little bit about the major legal regulatory conditions that we're facing, like the Forest Service permit or the Icon Pass agreement, and that are we on track to have those confirmed in time for closing?
Yeah, those are conditions of closing. So we'll continue working on that as the process moves forward. And this is an important step in making sure that we can continue those conversations.
John, I have a question. One of the things that the AIM pointed out is that there is a plan also for capital improvement and maintenance. And so it's, yes, there is a purchase price, but there is also a plan in order to continue to improve the mountain. That was one of the things that was built into this, yes?
Yeah, we've structured the, in kind of finance parlance, they call it the waterfall of accounts. And so what that means is there's money that needs to go to debt service and to operating and all of those things. And one of the things that was taken into account is we did create a capital plan to make sure that our facilities and all the different equipment that we have on the mountain is maintained appropriately and properly as we move forward. And then also some of the different capital projects that they had on the horizon, we've also accounted for over the life of these bonds, essentially. So that money is accounted for in this plan as well.
John, well, sorry, mic is very hot. What's that? 10. I can just sit way back here.
Will you turn mine down a smidge too?
You good?
Yeah.
Okay, John, can you speak a little bit about how the town will ensure continuity for employees and maintain morale during the transition?
Yeah, I think that that's a really big part of our communication work that we're going to do. As we move forward, we'll be working closely with the Powder staff and the Eldora Resort leadership team to make sure that we're communicating to folks what their benefits are going to look like, how this process will work as they become town employees, and how what I think our primary goal is that Eldora has operated for decades. They're experts in what they do, and we want to make sure those folks continue doing what they do so well. And so our primary concern during this next period of time in relation to that is making sure that we're communicating with the employees, with the managers on the mountain, and building structures that support them as we move forward. Our staff will be available to help with this here at the town, but we're also going to be working with some consultants that help transition from an HR perspective and also the finance perspective and all the different kind of operating procedures we need to address. We'll have a team of folks that are helping us with those jobs as we kind of move forward. And I guess I would say too, as we kind of move into this next phase, there will be questions. And I think it's important to know that we'll be available to answer that for them. And, understanding that they're in a very busy part of their season right now. So we want to try to balance the needs of what will happen when this closes with what they're doing right now so that we're not, we're keeping everybody in the right spot capacity wise.
I had one other question. You had mentioned that we'll have a 2-year operating agreement with Powder as this transition period. Can you just touch on like what their role will be and how much operational control there will be between the town and Powder as we go through that 2-year transition?
Sure. The board will maintain operational control of the mountain. Eldora has a GM, and that person functions as the day-to-day executive. They'll report to me within our town structure. And then the basic mechanism there would be to allow, we want Eldora, we don't want to get in the way of operations. They're the experts in that. But what we want to do is make sure that our strategic plans, and as we kind of think about these cultural things that need to happen between the town and the mountain, that those are all consistent like they would be for any department. So I think that's the first and most important thing is that GM role is so critical to the success of the overall mountain.
Is that a position that Powder will be hiring?
Yes, that is a position they'll be hiring. And so I think that's really what I would say. I think that's the really critical thing is that as we kind of transition into that space, we need to make sure that we build these operating norms between what's expected by the board and the community and how we kind of build that together. So.
More questions? So I have one just on water rights. How will water rights and other like existing arrangements, leases be handled? And how will it be handled as we transfer things, with continued operations? How are there?
So the asset purchase agreement really specifically talks about how water rights are transferred, and they will be transferred in accordance with Colorado law and the legal documents that are necessary to transfer the water rights from the existing owner to the town, to the enterprise. The same with all real property and all lease agreements. And so the town will become the owner of those water rights and all of those leases, so the town can operate the resort in the same manner that it's being operated right now.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. More questions?
I had one more thing I just want to add. In terms of the due diligence, legal structure, financing, and transition plan that we talked about, we do currently still have a non-disclosure agreement with Powder, which does mean that there are details from the due diligence process and negotiations that we can't share publicly. Private corporations like Powder are not required to share their financial and operating information with the public, and so we are maintaining that confidentiality, and we are going to share what is necessary to finalize the transaction. So I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of that NDA as well.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that reminder. Well, thank you all. Any other clarifying questions? If not, we're going to open the floor, open the mic for public comment. please state your name, your address, or your affiliation with the town, and comments, we're going to keep them to 3 minutes and no sharing or giving anyone your 3 minutes. Just each person want to hear from as many people as possible. We won't be responding to comments or questions tonight. Hopefully some of the things we've been talking about have answered some of your questions, but we will use this input as we create FAQs, the next version of FAQs, and then in the town halls and the coffee talks we have, town talks we have, we'll hopefully shed more and more light on this process. This is really the first big public step tonight, and we'll keep that going. But probably no direct answers tonight. So we'll just start in the room. Are there any public comments on this item this evening? Okay. Seeing none, and if you feel like you want to talk, you have an extra chance, but I'll go online for now. Any folks online, if you'd like to, any public comment on this stage of our pursuit of the outdoor acquisition? Not seeing any hand raised. I know we were having a bit of an issue earlier with volume, but mostly I'm seeing a bunch of muted mics. So if you're trying to talk, now's your time. And if not, there will be time for public comment in the numerous town halls we have planned in the future. So it seems as if there are no public comments. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board just for discussion and a motion.
I'll go ahead and start first. A huge thankfulness goes out to all the teams that we assembled to work on this, from our underwriters to folks who did due diligence. And it has been a colossal effort. And I just, looking at it to get to this point is really cool. So I'll be voting yes tonight.
Thanks, Nicole.
Just echo Nicole. I want to echo her thanks to the entire team for everyone's immense work on this project, and to everyone who ensured that our due diligence was thorough and professional. I think this is an incredible opportunity for our community, and I'm just thrilled with the step forward. As we continue, though, to forge ahead, we still want to keep hearing from you all, everyone online, everyone that comes in person, residents, businesses, and partners. Community input is going to be essential to make Eldora a true community asset like we all envision. So please, we want to keep hearing from you, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole, you're the one saying thank you to everyone for their effort, but thank you to your effort. I mean, I don't think anybody appreciates how much time you have personally put in on this. So thank you tremendously. And yeah, like Tierney said, this is really exciting, and it is, just the beginning of a, exciting process. And as trustees, we've been, doing this for the last year, and, the dedication to the thorough evaluation of this decision has been incredibly serious. And, we've really taken this on as like the future of our town, and not taken this decision lightly. So I just want to say, I'm so grateful for everybody you guys have brought in to help us. Yeah, I couldn't be more excited, even though it's going to be huge and challenging and hard. But yeah, it's a really great thing. And mostly I'm excited about the community connection part of it. You know, this thing that will like bring the ski area into something that supports our community, but also that can make operational decisions with a community focus, you know, and instead of just what brings in more dollars. So it's really great. Thank you to everybody and looking forward to the next step.
Yeah, I just want to thank John and you, Jennifer, for getting me up to speed so quickly. I had to learn a whole lot very quickly, and I appreciate you both being available. I'm encouraged with what I see with the financial stuff, and I'm excited to move forward with this and get some more community engagement. Thank you.
And I want to thank John, Jennifer, and Nicole, being the core team, and myself, and just the work you've done really to make this happen and bringing together some amazing consultants and lawyers and all these different lawyer specialties of law and all these consultants and all the great work that's gone into it. I'm grateful for Powder for continuing to work with us, for deciding to sell it in the first place, and for continuing to work with us and be great collaborators. I'm optimistic we're going to do something that benefits all of us. And I'm super excited for the community in the future. I think there's immense possibilities of just bringing together these two entities and what it can do to help all of Western Boulder County and the Peak region and Nederland and just our greater community. And just, it's going to be great to be part of having the operations, you know, considering the community and the community resources that we could bring in both directions. So I'm super excited. So thanks again. And I look forward to a lot more engagement finally. We've actually been working on this since August of 2024 when Nicole had the first idea about this, when you first read the article that Killington was selling. And it's been over almost about a year and a half, almost 16 months, and it's been a lot of work, and it's been incredible. And I think it's been challenging. I want to thank the community for being patient and kind of being so in the dark and out of the loop. And it's just been great that people seem to understand and believe in the long-term vision, and we appreciate the patience and look forward to engaging more now as we step forward from tonight.
I move to approve ordinance 882, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Nederland, Colorado, acting by and through the Mountain Recreation Enterprise, authoring the execution of an asset purchase agreement and related documents for the acquisition of Eldora Mountain Resort, declaring the public purposes and benefits of such acquisition and authorizing the mayor or mayor pro tem to execute the documents necessary to effectuate the transaction.
Second.
Trustee Maris,
Yes.
trustee Miller,
Yes.
trustee Jocelyn,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes, never say netter.
and Mayor Billy.
That was catchy. Yes.
Thank you. The motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here and appreciate everyone's patience and everyone's work. And it's a long road behind us and a long road ahead of us, but we're at a good place tonight. And with that, we will move on to our second, even more exciting ordinance, the Graywater ordinance.
Mayor and trustees, on December 2nd, we discussed the new statewide graywater rules, which came through House Bill 24-1362, which kind of just modifies Colorado's approach to graywater use by authorizing graywater treatment works in new construction statewide by default, unless restricted by a local government. You gave us direction to opt out of this new law, as is the ability of the town. And so what's before you right now is an ordinance that does just that. One note I wanted to make is that we haven't had any development that's asked for this yet. And if we do have things, if we have people who are looking to do this in the future, we can always modify our ordinance. The new rules went into effect on January 1st. So by taking this action tonight, you will opt out of the new rules. Several different municipalities around us, including Boulder, Lyons, and Greenwood Village, have all chosen to prohibit gray water use under this new statute, just because of staff capacity, uncertainty about water rights, and just concerns about the administrative costs related to the conservation benefits. We have not conducted any technical, fiscal, or legal analysis of gray water systems, including the impacts on our water rights or our augmentation plan. I think that the conversation within the legal community will continue about how this works in the future. And as that moves forward, if there's new information, we're happy to bring that to you to talk about it. In the staff report prepared by Attorney Madsen and Andrew Bliss, you can find a staff report from the town of Lyons regarding their ordinance, as well as information from the City of Boulder Water Resources Advisory Board recommending opting out of the treatment works, of the gray water treatment works. The recommendation from staff tonight is the approval of Ordinance 884, prohibiting the installation and use of gray water treatment works within the town of Nederland, and directing town manager, me, to notify CDPHE of this prohibition. Approval of this ordinance will maintain the town's existing regulatory status quo in response to state law, taking effect January 1st, 2026, while preserving the board's ability to reconsider gray water authorization at a later date should conditions or community interest change. There is a proposed motion in your packet, and we are available for your questions.
Clarifying questions for John?
You said you hadn't done any assessment of, the impact of gray water systems. Could you just give a quick summary, if you have one, of just what that would take to do some evaluation, so we would kind of know what, on face value, it seems like less wastewater in the system is less for us, our system to have to treat, which is generally good.
Water rights are very complex in Colorado. And so there are legal questions about how water moves back into the system and how we treat it, and then how it goes back into the system. There's also questions about what the use of gray water how that might impact the loading of our plant, and how that might look as we kind of think through the maintenance of things. And so that's one of the areas right now that I think is a question for Colorado as people start grappling with the new regulations and how to set it up. And so I think what our biggest concern is making sure we don't have an unintended consequence with our water rights, to make sure that we're maintaining them the way that we're supposed to. And then also just in terms of tracking this in staff capacity, what it takes to make sure that it's used appropriately and in accordance with what is supposed to happen. I believe we'll have some additional clarity about this. An analog that we discussed on the second was there was a law last year about medicinal use of different substances that could happen, and it was a ballot measure that allowed it in different zone districts in the state. We put a moratorium on that just while we let that regulatory framework come into play, and then we brought it back for consideration. I think that's something that could happen here, but as soon as we have more clarity on what those different impacts look like, I think I'd like to bring that back to the board.
So we'd be kind of waiting for the outside clarity to come into focus, rather than spending time doing our own assessment of what it means for us.
Correct. And I think the important note is we have had no interest from a developer perspective in this. And so I think the impacts of this are relatively low, because we can bring it back an ordinance to you in the future that could modify it or change it if necessary.
Great, thank you.
More questions? If not, we'll go to public comment. Any public comment in the room first on our choice with our gray water ordinance? If not, we'll go to the folks online. Any comments on our gray water ordinance? Hearing none and seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion. Well, it seems like it's intuitive, but well, as much as it sounds like a great idea, and I do think in many ways it is a great idea to reuse water and reuse gray water, we may not want to be the guinea pigs on this one. So, it seems, and just from the different guidance we've gotten from our own water lawyers, as well as, just seeing what other neighboring municipalities have done, it seems like this is the wise choice today.
I guess this was more of a clarifying question, but do we know of any municipalities in at least the Front Range that are letting this come into play? You mentioned
I think that that's
several.
hard
were
to
not.
know, because if they don't take any action, then essentially they're allowing gray water systems to be installed. So that's hard to know. We know the ones who are taking action right as of now.
Yeah, like Billy said, I mean, on paper, this looks like a great idea, but I get the complexities of both water rights and just oversight and staff time is not insignificant. So prudence over altruism.
Idealism. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that we can always readdress this later down the line, so it's not like it's a nail in the coffin or anything. So,
I generally agree with all of these sentiments and staff's recommendation.
Nicole,
Nothing to add here.
thank you.
All right, well, I move to approve ordinance number 884, prohibiting the installation and use of gray water treatment works within the town of Nederland and directing the town manager to notify CDPHE of the prohibition.
Second.
AC?
Trustee Jocelyn,
yes,
trustee Maris,
Yes.
trustee Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion's unanimously approved.
Great, thank you, everyone. And with that, we'll move into our one and only discussion item in the evening regarding the visitor center and some ideas for that.
Mayor and trustees, as you know from our budget conversation, we've had some difficulty operating the visitor center recently as a year-round town-run function. And there's been some challenges with staffing consistency and service stability. Because of this, our adopted 2026 budget contemplates operating the visitor center only during the summer months while the town evaluates ways that we can stabilize those operations. Since the budget was adopted, there have been a few community organizations that have expressed interest in leasing this space and operating it for the town. If we did this, what we could do is lease it out for a one-year term to an eligible organization that could provide visitor center services and support the local business community, which I think are our two goals that we've kind of expressed for the visitor center in these conversations. At the end of the year, we could reevaluate the arrangement to determine whether to continue it in 2027. Regardless of what you guys choose to do tonight in terms of these leases, the next big plan for the visitor center is to clean and organize the space to make sure that any future operational approach has a good workable space and refresh it just a little bit to make sure that it's a good space for next season. We're requesting direction tonight on whether to develop a lease space operating model for the visitor center. And if we do that, any parameters that you might suggest guide service expectations and scope of work for that. If you're interested in pursuing a one-year lease arrangement, we can return with a proposed selection process, a scope of service for a service, and then kind of draft lease parameters that are aligned to your direction. In my aim, I included several questions that you might consider for how we would do this. And if you direct, we will come back to you with a draft scope of services and process for leasing the space for the remainder of 2026.
Thanks, John. What clarifying questions do we have for John?
So John, it mentions that there have been community organizations, as in like more than one, who've reached out to express this desire.
That's correct. There's been two, actually now three, I'll call it three organizations that have been interested.
And they've approached and said, hey, we're willing to basically run the visitor center for you, sort of from that perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the questions I have is regarding that process for how we would determine, but
Right.
we have had a pretty complete proposal offered to us that would operate it as a visitor center and provide community benefit by really promoting local businesses is the plan, like to make sure that we're pointing people towards those businesses that exist in Netherland and just staffing it as consistently as possible. And I think no matter what, that should be a part of the scope of service here.
And in that proposal, or generally, I mean, where does it cut off in terms of revenue, right? If this is a leasee, are they basically take control of all of Town of Netherlands product and they get to take a cut, or is there a revenue share? I'm sure some of this is to be like discussed today or tonight and, you know, come back with a plan, but I'm just curious as to what their initial proposals have been.
I've had a proposal that our revenue is purchased by somebody operating it and then they would just sell it just to make it clean. So there's no accounting issues with how that would work in the future. But a revenue share possibility, or maybe we could continue using the space for certain things that we have that we need to, you know, use it for in that way. That could certainly be part of the arrangement. I have done some research about other similar agreements that some other communities have. Estes Park has a similar one. Idaho Springs has a similar one as well. And I think there are different ways to think about it, but I definitely think there might be a preference to make it simple and they would sell their own merchandise and we'd either sell them ours or do something with it, like an arrangement just to get rid of it, or not to get rid of it, but to sell our inventory.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
More
John.
questions?
At first glance, this feels like kind of an incredible opportunity for us, given our budgetary constraints and everything we talked about during budget season. Have you identified any, like besides just taking time to figure out what this would look like and kind of the administrative hurdles of getting an agreement together and just parsing through it, are there any other downsides or challenges that you've identified to this kind of?
I think as long as the
Partnership.
scope of service expresses the goals of the board and the community, and that is you know, there's some evolution allowed in that process so that we can say, we can say this is kind of our expectations for what a visitor center does in Netherlands. One of the things that really kind of caught my ear as we were talking about this is the talk about community benefit and really using it as a space to pull the business community together to make sure that we're pointing to the different places throughout. I think that could be a really good thing. So I think it's really about building that scope of services in a way that supports your goals.
My question on this is if there's a organization that feels like they can rent this, you know, pay rent on the space, buy the, you know, merchandise that they're going to sell from us and staff it, and I assume still make money, what, you know, why aren't we doing that? And, you know, you could say, okay, there, you know, there's organizational overhead to make that happen, but there's organizational overhead to come up with a lease and manage that operation. You know, what are we missing that somebody else thinks this is a viable opportunity and we don't?
I don't think we don't. I don't think that's a accurate statement.
Or I guess we haven't been able to
We haven't. And
execute.
we haven't had, I think there's two problems. And one is that we've had, there's been trauma at the visitor center on the staffing level. There are some rough things that happened there over the last few years. And that's been a challenge. And I think the other challenge is 2026 is kind of this pivot point for us, right? We're really focused on our general fund and what we're doing with the general fund. And there's external things that are happening as well that might change conditions in the town significantly. But for 2026, we need to manage our general fund as we planned in the budget. And I think that we don't have the operational capacity to run it all year. And it's better for Nederland, it's better for our sales tax generation, it's better for our town, our residents, and our businesses if we can operate the visitor center every day. And so I think really what this does is it allows that model to start taking place and to kind of do it as a pilot in a way where, you know, we're not going to enter into a contract longer than a year. There would be a renewal period. It's kind of like a pilot program to see if this kind of model could work. It is something if you remember in the 2024 budget process, as we were talking about 25, this was something that came up about, is there people in our community that might be able to manage it differently, and how would that look? And so I think what this would really do is it gives us an opportunity to work with partners in our community and build a community space that really promotes everyone. And I agree with you. I think that's a very important question. Like if other people can do it, why can't we do it? And I think we can. I think this would give us some time to figure out what that model could look like long term. And it would require, I think it's important to know also, doing this, if we were to run it ourselves, would require us to probably do a supplemental budget and to find a full-time employee that could do it at probably a relatively significant salary that is going to mostly hit our general fund. And I think that could have a positive impact on the facility, but that might be a decision that's better suited for 2027 than 2026.
That makes sense.
More questions, clarifying questions before we go to public comment? If not, we'll go to public comment. Anyone in the room have any comments on our idea to drop a proposal for the visitor center use? Folks online? Any public comments on this discussion item? Now we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a nod of for needed to direct the staff.
Well, I think so. You know, assuming we would decide to go ahead with this, you know, some of the questions in the aim here about, you know, branding representation and, you know, having, you know, how does a business represent, you know, the town and the town's businesses, but also, you know, just the town image. Does seem like that's something we would have to, you know, define pretty clearly about what, you know, and how do we oversee, you know, how the staff are trained and how they're going to talk about the town. I mean, like, how do we kind of guarantee that happens appropriately? That seems like kind of one of the larger challenges around, you know, outsourcing this operation. Any thoughts on that?
I am fairly confident I can write a scope of services that would accomplish that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a branch here. It doesn't have to be one or the other. What I could do is develop, you know, I think what was important for me is that we had inquiries about this, and it's really a board level decision about whether or not this is something that would be appropriate for our community. I think we can execute the plan we had for 2026, but this would give us more operational continuity. And so what I might suggest, just in terms of that, we could, based on this discussion and direction, come back with that scope of service and then make sure that everybody is comfortable with it and how we would do it. I think in terms of how you teach people to talk about the town, I think that's very similar to how we would train our employees too. I think what we would do is say, this is kind of our expectation. This is how these are our businesses. I think we can work with our DDA on that because they are working on a business listing and directory that should be live fairly soon, and they could work with that directory. And then there's a lot of other things that the Visitor Center does. We get a lot of inquiries about going into Rocky Mountain National Park and what's happening at Eldora and what's happening, at Barker and like where you go fishing and like all of those kinds of things. So it's really about also making sure that you have a person in that role that has that knowledge and that ability. And I think I do think that some of the people who have made these inquiries have that knowledge base. And I think as a part of the selection process, we could, whether we do an RFP or however we do this, we can ask for that expertise to be demonstrated in that document. And so I think the other piece of this would be treating it like a true pilot, seeing how this goes, and then evaluating, because we would not enter a contract no matter what over a year for something like this. That's something that we'd want to approve. And that's similar to what we do for our leases here at the community center. But I think it would give us an opportunity to really evaluate how that facility works. One thing I'll tell you that's really kind of interesting about that space is it does get 80 people a day through the center. As an informational resource, it provides a lot of good for the community. I think it's just the retail sales. I think it's when people come to a place like Nederland that's known for local art and local things, they want local. And I think one of the things that's been a challenge for us is selling merchandise that kind of meets that need, that's different and differentiated. And I think there's a space for merchandise sales in there, but I think that's just one of the things that's challenging about that space is we kind of think through what it could be. And I think one of the things that excites me about this is it's an opportunity, which we could take to your point, of really highlighting local things here. So I think no matter what we do, that should be a focus of what happens next.
I would nod for this. I think this is a great opportunity, knowing our operational constraints and where we want to be prioritizing our time right now. For us to take that on feels like a big lift. And I know we talked about that during budget season. So this feels like it could fill in the gap that we're kind of missing. And I like the idea of a pilot program. 1 year seems like a good idea. Talking about all of these suggested questions of should the operator be required to ... 1 through 8. Yeah, all of those would be my preferred yes. Whether or not it's a requirement or if we kind of parse through it more. I mean, I think I kind of defer to you on the scope of service and coming back to us and then making it more of a discussion at that point. But I like all of these requirements as requirements.
I too like all of these as requirements. I'm especially intrigued by number 5. I think that that's important to look at with the contract or with the lease. We're hoping to have it staffed, more often, which is the whole point in doing this in the first place. And what I'd hate to see is go through all this and then them not be open because it's shoulder season or whatever. So, yeah. Any ideas on how to be effective, and do you have previous metrics that support it being successful in the off season?
Yes, I can bring forward a report for you guys about that with the scope, if that works.
We
I
did get
also-
one. Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
No, I was just gonna say, I also nod. I'm more interested to see the scope of services and what you might suggest. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I would just add, we did get one public input on this via email. And I think one of the great suggestions in there was working with the high school as a way for, kind of a lot of high school. This was like an early work opportunity for high school kids. I think that's a great way, especially, both ways, getting the high school kids, more involved in the community and, as a resource for the communities, for the visitor center. So if there's a way to kind of work that into the agreement, that'd be awesome.
Just as a further clarification for me, was there anything that I didn't address in these questions that you would expect addressed or that you'd like to see addressed in the scope or potential scope, I guess? Okay. One thing
complete.
One thing I had been thinking about, I'm just kind of offering this as one last question. As there's a community good aspect of this, I think that we might consider a lower than market rate rent for this facility, just to make sure that we can get a good pilot working. Is that something that you guys are comfortable with, if we can do some analysis to kind of show the reason? Okay.
Sure.
You got my nod. Nods over here, and then Nicole and Tierney already nodded, so 5 nods. Thank you. Anything else from us on this, John?
No, thank you.
Great, okay. Thank you. With that, we will go to public comment on non-agenda items. If there's any public comment on a non-agenda item, now is the time. First, we'll go in the room. If anyone has a public comment on agenda item, and then online. One. All right, hearing none, seeing none. We'll just go on to other business. Any other business?
Yes, I have an item.
Go for it.
One of the things I would like to ask the board for their thoughts on is, as we went through this process with Eldora, John had to investigate all kinds of things around, employee benefits and, just implications for the employees. And as a part of that process, I had asked him to also look into what could be the potential for our board members to also capture more extended benefits, health benefits. I think that this would be a great way to attract new board members, or board members who may see this as very much a burden of time, because it is, but that we could potentially help supplement that burden with, government health benefits. Not only that, but I would like for us to explore giving ski passes, as we continue this endeavor with Eldora. Town or the employees already receive a ski pass, and that's something that I think town employees, and also, again, I would like to extend to board members. I would also ask that we reevaluate what the compensation is for our board employees. We are entering a phase where things are just going to be more complicated for us as a town. And I want folks to feel that they get not just, the good work that we do, but that they do feel that it is compensated and appropriately. I don't know where that particular one will lead, but I do think that it's just worth surfacing, and it's a discussion item. I think personally of, the time that I had dedicated to, the Eldora project and whatnot, it's a heavy load. And I want folks, even if we don't pursue something like an expanded compensation, I would really like us to consider looking into and directing town staff and town attorney Madsen to look into what these health benefits could look like for our elected officials. So, but would like to hear other folks' thoughts on that.
Aren't we already employees, if I understand correctly? Technically?
You are. It's the way you're classified, we can definitely do what Mayor Pro Tem Sterling has asked, and we can definitely come back to you with some research about it. You are compensated for your time on the board, and that there's that's probably a discussion item that we could bring back to you about how that works. And
I was just wondering about the employee part, because I thought
Yeah.
we were actually employees.
you are, you for all intents and purposes are employees of the town.
Yeah.
But what requires is a different classification if we were to receive health benefits.
Yeah.
Right, and so
'cause
that's
we're not full-time, which is the threshold for 30 hours a week or whatever for
And
healthcare.
yeah, well, just not only that, but it's not something that's currently offered, right? And
Yeah.
so it would be a decision and a discussion on our behalf.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Um,
I think it's a good thing. And I would just add that even if we weren't to change the level of compensation, I think it's worth reevaluating how it gets used. I mean, I know there's been some talk in the past of, providing dinner or something when we have long meetings and stuff like that,
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
so. I think the whole thing warrants some level of discussion, so the topic
And
has
I
my support.
Yeah, I also look at this as a helping to promote more diverse voices, actually applying for the BOT. It's hard if you're an hourly employee, or it's hard if maybe you don't have those health benefits, and that, you know, that could lock out quite a few people from even considering running for the Board of Trustees. So for me, this is as much as an initiative to create more diverse voices coming to the board, which is which was one of the reasons why I asked John to initially look into it.
Any comments on that? I think it's a good idea. I like the idea of the diversity side of it, where it just allows people, you know, to get a benefit, a great benefit like health insurance. I guess for some reason, I'm finding myself feeling a little anxious that after, you know, we had a productive meeting and have had a big milestone that we're looking to like reward ourselves. I feel like I'd want us to put these in place for future trustees
Right.
more than just
That's
ourselves.
actually a requirement under
Yeah,
state
okay.
law.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
You can't give yourself a pay increase.
Yeah.
You can give a future board pay increases.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that seems like a much
We
cleaner.
have an election coming up in April. I'm having the conversation now so that we can, if possible, start to attract some of that new talent,
Mhm.
and or just make them aware that these could be some of the possibilities for when that board potentially, when we have new members in April.
That makes sense. Go for it. Yeah, Macy. Actually, anything else, Nikki, because Macy had some.
Just direction.
Yeah, we need,
I think, yeah,
Thank you.
yes.
Well-
Per Nicole's suggestion, I think that'd be great to
Yeah,
have. the
we'll bring back a
discussion.
discussion item if that works for you guys to consider.
Can I just ask, I think this is a great idea. I understand why it's coming up now in terms of the election coming up, but also I just want to be aware of John's time and resources and our priorities. And I just want to make sure that, John, you have the time and the capacity to do that, knowing competing priorities when there might be things that are,
We are going to be, one of the parts of the next piece of work to previous action item is I need to finalize the benefit package, and
Mhm.
that includes medical and retirement for the staff, just to make sure we're all aligned to what we've been thinking about for Eldora. So this is an okay time for me to, this is a small piece of what we can bring forward into this conversation. So
okay, great, thank you.
yeah, a lot of the work has already been done, and just surfacing, like, is it possible? What could we do? What could it be offered? We had that going in parallel while we were looking for the Eldora benefits.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Macy?
It actually segues very well into what you guys were just talking about, is that I was just gonna share that nomination petitions for the upcoming 2026 elections have been released as of today. And I encourage community members to either print one off the website, email me for a copy, or stop by town hall to pick up a printed copy, to circulate and, participate in our 2026 election.
Thanks, Macy.
I have one more last one too, if it's
Yeah,
all right.
go for it.
I was talking to NDDA Director Massengale today, and she noted that they still have a vacancy on their board,
Mhm.
and asked about whether the board would be comfortable with us listing those positions that we still have available in advisory boards and other boards as open until filled, instead of having a window, just so that we can keep those applications live on our website and maybe start attracting people as they come, just to kind of try to start filling those spaces. And I told her I would ask about just getting a nod to do that from you all tonight, if that would be okay.
Yes. Anything else? Any other business? Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Macy? Yeah, well, hold on, guys.
Public comment, non-agenda.
I did it.
Okay, good.
I did already. Yeah, that's all right. There was none. There were none.
And that was trustee Miller with a second by Maris. Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Mayor Billy,
yes.
trustee Miller,
Yes.
trustee Jocelyn,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
and trustee Maris.
Yes.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned at 8:53.
Thanks, everyone. Great work tonight.